may I introduce to you, Lisa Baudoin from Books and Company, the other half, the Ocono of Oconomowaukee.
Thanks, Daniel, and welcome everybody. I'm really excited to have Lauren Fox back. She is the New York Times best-selling author of Send For Me, in addition to her novels Days of Awe, which was one of my favorites, Still Life with Husband, and Friends Like Us. She's been writing pieces for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Marie Claire, Parenting and Psychology Today, when she's not working on her novels. She lives in Milwaukee with her family, and we are thrilled to have her. So welcome back, Lauren. And I thought maybe you could start by giving us a little synopsis for those who haven't read Send For Me of the story. And then if you want, read a page to give us a bit of a flavor of it.
Sure. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for doing this. And yeah, so there's no harder question for me than, can you give us a synopsis of your book? So I'll start with, I'll read the little opening section, and then I'll give a little synopsis, and then we can dive in. So the first page is an excerpt from a letter, and it starts, I can hardly speak. It starts with a panic, the sound of sharp knocking, the pounding on Annalise's door, a crash in her skull, jolting her from sleep. They're coming. Her heart slams, and she sits up, blind in the darkness. Her arms reach out. Where's the baby? Fear floods her lungs. She's drowning. They're coming. Breathe. Hold the baby close. Keep her quiet. Is there something else in the churning flood of terror? In the squeeze of panic, the slightest slackening? Relief? She's been waiting so long for this moment, dread her constant companion, and now it's here. Whatever horror is about to befall her, she won't have to fear it any longer. In the room, silent now, she strains to hear. Her heart is pounding so hard her body is thrumming, her hands trembling. Is that her husband next to her, snoring softly? Is that the warm, reassuring shape of him? They will take him too. They'll take all of it, everything and everyone she has ever loved, in an instant, a flash. Years will pass, a long, surprising slant of light, and this terror will abate. She will pick her daughter up from school, stand in her kitchen with her hands on her hips, sip from a glass in the evening, slip under smooth sheets. But this will always be her frozen moment, the definition of her days. They will always be pounding on the door in the middle of the night. They will always be coming. Okay, so.
That's a powerful place to start too. I mean, it just pulls you right in.
So that's thank you. That's the first page and a half of the book. And it's about, Send For Me is about 4 generations of Jewish women. It starts in Germany before World War II, and it spans all the way until the early 90s. And it's about a family. So it's basically about the ones who weren't able to escape and the ones who got out, and then the sort of the generations after, and how how history kind of travels through the generations and makes its mark on our hearts and our brains.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the letters that you found that are spread throughout the story?
Yeah.
And just the discovery of them, and yeah, because that's always a good place.
Yeah, so it's semi-autobiographical. I mean, it's a novel, it's fiction, but it's based on my family's story. And when I was in my mid-20s, I found a box of letters in my parents' basement that were written by my great-grandmother to my grandmother. So they were dated from like 1938 to 1941. And they were not only were they in German on like disintegrating onion skin paper, but they were in a script that really very few people could read, very few people can read. So I stumbled on them. My grandparents had been living with us before they died, and all the contents of their apartment were in my parents' basement. And I knew, even though I couldn't make heads or tails of them, I knew that they were something special. So I just, it was kind of a magical moment for me. And I took the letters back with me to Minneapolis, where I was in grad school at the time. And I found a professor at the University of Minnesota who was able to translate them for me. His father was Jewish and his mother wasn't, and he had grown up in Berlin and survived the war by passing as a non-Jew. So he had sort of, it was just kind of this, we sort of had a connection, and he kind of had he just felt like he had something at stake too in this project. So he translated the letters for me. I would bring a couple of them to his office. Like I had like 75 letters, and I would bring like 3 or 4 of them to his office every week, and he would read them into a tape recorder, and he would read them in English, like translate as he was reading, and then I would take them home and transcribe them. So the whole process was like, there was something about the fact that the process took about 1.5 years that made it, I don't know, even more, like I said, magical before, but it really was. It was like a process of getting to know my great grandmother through the translation.
And I think having somebody read them out loud to you
Yeah.
was so different than trying to do it yourself. I mean, it's such oral history.
Yeah, and different from like sending them off somewhere and then getting a stack of letters back. Like it was really a sort of, I remember feeling like every once in a while I felt like I'd get back to my apartment and I'd like almost be expecting a letter from her. Like it was very sort of present.
May I just ask about the handwriting? Did the handwriting turn out to be a style of German handwriting, or did your grandmother just have, did your great grandmother have just exotic handwriting?
No, I don't think she did. I have a copy. I think it's a style of writing that was taught before World War I, and then the Nazis briefly resurrected it because they thought it was like a pure German script. But you can see, like, even if you can read German, you can't really read that. It's just sort of looks like, yeah.
It's pretty though.
It is beautiful.
You could tell she had beautiful handwriting, but
On a different planet.
yeah, right.
What was it like to transition? And we're all well aware that you've done 7,000 events for this book, so which is why we're doing the book club talk. But there are some questions that one always wants to know, and sort of like as somebody who's been loyally reading all your books and loving them, this book is sort of a transitional book. Like, what was it like to write in the style of this book as opposed to the first 3 novels? So even the third is a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I ask myself that question and I don't really have an answer. I think the material, I mean, I've been sitting with this material for 25 years and it just sort of lent itself to the style. It like picked the style for me. And I also think, it was an experiment for me and kind of an adventure. And I was definitely like stretching myself because I feel like I know how to write like, quippy present tense, and I sort of know how to do that. And I just felt like I was ready to try something else. Not like, it wasn't like I was doing something completely different. I was just sort of like reaching into my toolkit and like rearranging the tools. But I definitely feel like this material needed to be, well, first of all, obviously most of it needed to be past tense, so that changed my style. And it was also just really, and doing the historical research kind of put me in a different mindset too. It just like my whole like approach to the book was a little bit different.
Did it make you think that your next book will be even more of a stretch, or will you return, or like, are we seeing a male construction worker, voice in the future?
Yes. Yeah, definitely a male construction worker. I just it just came to me in a lightning bolt. Yeah, no, I just starting to work on my next book, and it's about a male construction worker. No, but it's going to be. I don't really want to talk about it because whenever I start to talk about what I'm working on, it just like petrifies it, and I can't.
Oh no, that's
forward.
bad juju. I get it. Yeah,
bad juju. But it's going to be different too. I just feel like I had fun trying something new, even though this isn't exactly fun material, but it was a stretch for me.
And it was such an emotional, not just because of the topic, but the way you paused and the bits of story that you told and then resurrected the pieces later. It was just a very emotional way of telling the story, of writing, of having the breaks where you had to sort of ponder. You gave the reader time to soak something in.
There were, like I said, there were 75 letters, and in the book there's probably like a total of maybe 2 or 3 pages of her voice that I wove through the book. And so it demanded that pace. You know what I mean? It's sort of like like if I had tried to put in, I lived with those letters for such a long time, and I distilled them in my mind and on my computer, and I sort of like was working with them for such a long time. They demanded those pauses. They were so powerful. And then at the same time, so much of the letters was so mundane. You know, so much of it was just repetitive, and her talking about what to sell and what to keep. And, you know, as she gradually figured out she couldn't keep anything, you know, it was sort of like that. I tried to like take that story and just make it, and just distill it to like crush it like a diamond, you know?
Yeah, we were discussing beforehand how much we love the white space in the story. It just, did you all, so you had that all been thought, so you had that had all been thought out before, like as you were writing, you were like, there's going to be a pause here. So,
Well, yeah.
Nice.
I mean, I'm always kind of, I'm a slow writer, and this book took me 25 years to write. So I thought, I mean, it was all, I thought about it so much before I started writing it. And I knew that there was going to be a lot of, there was going to be white space.
Yeah.
And breaks.
Lisa had another structural question, didn't you?
Well, and I do, and it came up too on the chat, is with the research and the choosing of the letters and then structuring it into a story, did it all start before? Did you get all the research done? Did you find yourself stopping? Did you know what parts of the letter you were going to use? Or was it a continual conversation, you know, as soon as you started really putting it all down?
Yes, yes to all of that.
All of it.
I know I was definitely researching while I was writing, which was really enjoyable. And it was just so fun to like be in the midst of this, you know, these really intense scenes. And then to be like, well, what did a shoe look like? What did a lady's shoe look like in 1937? You know, so it was like a nice kind of break for me to sort of like dive down into those rabbit holes. But and I also it took me a long time to figure this out, like a long time after I'd finished writing the book, that the book is really a conversation with the letters. So as I was figuring out what letters to use, I was thinking of scenes that would make sense. Like in one of the letters, she says, you know, I can't remember if I even included this in the book, but she says something about you left your coat here. If I don't think of everything, I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly what it was. But then I thought about a scene where she would be buying her daughter that coat. So then I wrote that scene.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the things that we had been talking about is one of the things I really like about the book is I do love the detail. I don't want to call them mundane because they're so beautiful, and I obsess over the mundane. So just like I got so carried away by the shopkeepers, and I did actually, before the event, I was like, after reading this book again, I was like, why isn't there a Jewish bakery in Milwaukee? So where can I go? I do shop at an independent shoe store here, but you know, it's just like
What do you want? I'll see if I can rustle it up for you. Flammkuchen. I can probably make that happen.
I mean, there's a, you know, I feel like on top of all the tragedy happening and the slow burn, just like when Annalise loses her friend Sophie, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you just, you know, it also put me in mind of how quickly how much life can change without you sort of knowing about it, and how quickly that can happen anywhere. I mean, I think that's something that a lot of us were concerned about and continue to be concerned about wherever we live. Did you think about that fragility? Like, what was or it just was a natural part of the letters? Or had you been thinking about that even when you weren't working on the book?
Yes. Again, yes to everything. I feel like, especially for women, life is so much about like, I mean, even still today, I think life is so much about like the details, the domestic details. It's just like the accumulation of these small details. And of course, while I was writing, I mean, I came back to this project in 2016, you know, like a couple of weeks after Trump was elected. And so that like, you know, sort of pervasive fear that things could turn on a dime, and, you know, were changing before our eyes without us knowing what to do or how it was happening, was all a part of the process of writing this book. And just, you know, think we all over the last few years have had that, like you said, like that feeling that like life is so fragile, and everything that we think like anchors us is really just an ephemeral detail. So I really was thinking about that a lot as I was writing the book.
More and more. I mean,
have,
it's something that comes up all the time
yeah,
with us with wildfires and more
yeah,
disasters and floods and things like that, as well as political unrest.
yeah.
So,
I have, sorry, I was just gonna say I have in my kitchen, I have my grandparents' coffee grinder. Like I don't think it's particularly special. I think it was probably mass produced, but it's, it says cafe in German, and it's this like beautiful sort of tin porcelain thing. And I've had it, I've carried it with me since right after college. And it's ended up in every home I've lived in. And I think about that, and I think about them having that in Germany and thinking like this is a piece of our life here. And then, that life was over, but the coffee maker is still here.
And do you still grind with it?
No.
Because I think about you, and I think about that coffee grinder sometimes when I'm making my coffee, and especially this past year, because it's just the appreciation that I can grind my coffee and that I can have coffee. And then I think, gosh, those grinders that do, and what it would be like having the grinder.
I can't anymore, but when I first found it, again, that was another thing that was in my parents' basement. I could still smell the coffee beans, and I was like, that's the coffee they were, just the way things, have such, things are so precious.
And the Medane, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the Medane does anchor us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay. Well, Bonnie's been very actively asking questions, and Lisa kind of asked the last one, and it's funny because Bonnie and I are like thinking like this, because Lisa and I were asking about the same exact question. She wrote, how did Ms. Fox decide to go with Annalise and her husband's male friend's mutual attraction? Like, what was your decision to have that be a subplot? How did you decide how far to go with it? And with Oscar, to helping Bonnie.
I wrote a couple of different versions of that story, and in one the attraction was consummated, and one version it didn't really exist, and I was kind of playing with like what felt right and what felt like the appropriate mirror to their sadness, like what was because I felt like this isn't, I mean, the book is a love story in a way, but it's not an affair story. It's not like so much of the tension in the book comes from outside. And I felt like it was inauthentic to create that like character tension it wasn't a love triangle. But I also felt like when you're in the midst of that kind of, when you're living the life that they were living, I mean, I think that attraction made sense to me, and it didn't make sense for them to blow up their lives because of it.
Yeah, it makes it more, I don't know, there's something pure, especially in fiction, about the unconsummated.
And also both of those characters had people they left behind, and Annalise's husband, Walter, didn't. So I felt like that was a connection that they had that sort of contributed to.
And I think if that sort of spark was between her and Walter during the whole entire time, it would have felt too fairy tale. So to have that extra person, it just shows how we have to have more than just one. We have to have that community. And like you say, those stories that connect us together. Yeah. And it's not always the person we're married to. And that's not bad. It doesn't have to be consummated, like you said.
That storyline also helped me because, it's like I said, it's based on my family story, and it helped me fictionalize it fully. It sort of like pulled me away from it needing to remain too true to what I knew about my grandparents, who I only knew as, of course, my grandparents, so it helped me like creatively to include that storyline.
Yeah, I know you did that. For example, Claire's boyfriend's from England.
But my husband's from Ireland, so
clearly something different.
Stop making assumptions.
Did we almost lose? Did your husband ever say? Did Andrew ever say, "Oh, by the way, we're Dublin bound, leaving everything behind"?
Well, yeah, no. I mean, that's a huge piece of our relationship. I mean, somebody is always homesick. Like right. That's a huge, geography is a huge piece of who we are as a family. Like my older daughter's in Ireland right now, staying with her grandmother. And and texting us constantly. So yeah, it's yeah, it's funny. Like that storyline, the Claire storyline, wasn't in the original version of the book, and I sent it to my editor as just, I sent this like historical fiction book to my editor and was like, I'm done. And she said, okay, no, you're not. There's a third of this book missing, and it's the contemporary piece. So I was so reluctant to write that. I so didn't want to, because it felt too like, this is just sort of jumping off on what you're saying about Matthew being sort of similar to Andrew. Like felt too close. I mean, this book is already so close, and I just didn't want to write. I didn't want it to get any more personal, but
No.
she's been my editor for 15 years and I trust her. So I was like, all right, I'll try.
And apparently a novelist too. So
yeah.
What can't she do?
What can't she do?
I think I thought it was great because it sort of linked your work a little together to the older stories. And then also there's always this question of framing historical fiction. And if you had left out the contemporary part, I feel like it would have been judged more pure genre.
Yeah.
And I feel like even though there are some really great historical like fiction books that are accepted as genre, the one about the Ville de Hive, I can't remember what it's called, but French, anyway, the point being this sort of is like, it's actually, you can't pigeonhole it completely.
Yeah.
And it brings it into now, because I think so much we want to leave those stories like they're not part of who we are today. And I think it's an important story to see that this is who we are today. And we are connected to these stories today.
Yeah, we love it. We thought the homesickness parallel, so much. So glad. That Jenny, she's a smart one.
But does she read fiction?
So I was looking at, we promised that this would be a book talk and not just about, we could talk about you for hours, but we were going to talk a little about some of your other books. And the one I thought, what I think a lot of fans are saying is, so I love Lauren Fox, but Lauren Fox doesn't always read what Lauren Fox fans would read. But it seemed to me that The Yellow Bird was probably the book that would be closest to, if I loved Send for Me. Oh, look, you can buy it either way. I'll bet, actually knowing Penguin Random House, I'll bet you can't buy the hardcover anymore. Would you talk a little about The Yellow Bird Sings? Because I think people, once again, I think that it would be a great recommendation for people who love Send for Me.
Yeah, we did an event together, Jennifer Rossner and I, and so that's how I was originally introduced to the book. And oh my God, so I took copious notes on these book recommendations because you guys know I get flop sweat. So I'm going to read my notes, okay?
Okay.
So it's the story of a young mother who's forced to go into hiding with her 5-year-old daughter, and they are sheltered in a Polish family's barn. And it is partly like just a careful rendering of their day-to-day existence in this barn, but it's also about in the family that's risking their lives and the complicated mess of relationships. But it's also about music, and it's kind of also about noise and like the danger and the beauty of music and sound. And because the mother's main job is to keep her 5-year-old daughter from making a sound, and the daughter's a musical prodigy, so it's especially hard to keep her quiet. And so I read this book before bed most nights, and I just have to say, the last third of the book, like I read it at night and I dreamed about it. It just slayed me. Like the book is really, really exquisitely written, and it's really, really powerful.
It was completely off my radar, despite being a National Jewish Book Award finalist.
Yeah.
I usually pay attention to that. Did you?
I just was aware of it, but I haven't read it either. But it was perfect timing because I'm doing the Jewish Book Fair in a couple of weeks. So.
Oh yeah, I have some recommendations for you.
I do. Oh, good.
Anyway, that's definitely going on my list too. I also have some book club recommendation talks to do for some people I think who would really love it. So yay, Judith! As you know, Lauren might know that I finagle Lauren to help me with a book called Squirrel Hill that's coming out in a few weeks by Mark Oppenheimer, which is about the Jewish community in Pittsburgh and the response to the Tree of Life shooting. And but it's definitely it's not about really a mass. I mean, it is inspired by a mass shooting, but it's really about the Jewish community, all the different aspects of the Jewish community, and how they're able to kind of come together to work through the tragedy and kind of heal. And it's community journalism, which I just love, you know, following a whole bunch of people around. And so anyway, I recommend it for your Jewish book fair. That's all I have to say.
Well, and you don't have to, because when I was meeting with our rep, they said, well, you know, Daniel loved this book, so you probably should get it. I said, okay, I'll double my order.
Lauren, Rachel's supposed to lend it to you after she's done with it. So.
Yeah, Rachel.
But if you didn't like it, then you have to fake it. So yeah, I didn't get it.
Well, I truly don't have it yet. So,
what book would you like to talk about next?
who, me?
Yeah, sure. Or
Okay.
Lisa can recommend one.
Yeah, let's do
Go
Lisa.
ahead. I don't have, I mean, mine are always so tied up in what we've been reading. So
Okay,
let
I'll
Lauren
go.
go.
I'll go next. So I'm going to talk about. I want to make sure I have time to talk about my writing group and the amazing writing group that I'm in and the books that they've published in the last year or two. But before I do that, I just want to recommend a book called Mrs. Caliban. Do you guys know that one?
No.
Actually, I just want to say, not only did I read it, but I have the exact month that I read it, which was July, because I keep a list of when I read books. July of 1986,
No way.
35 years ago.
So that's amazing. I keep a list too, but it doesn't go back that far.
I started in 1983, and then I backwards fit 1982, and I almost cried myself to sleep because I said, I've got 20 years of books that I forgot to write down. What am I going to do? This list is so empty.
Incomplete.
And it turns out when you get old, it turns out it's more complete. I was a bookseller at Harry W. Schwartz bookshops, and I worked on the floor of the Iron Block store, which is now Empty Spices. It's other things too. And it was from a very tiny press. And it was just one of these word of mouth things that we kept bringing in. And then I think, and so like 3 or 4 of us had read it. I know my friend John, my friend Jean had read it. I can think of the 2 of the other people who read it, probably some other people I don't think about anymore. And then it got picked up, I think, by Dell for trade distribution. I know it hit a bestseller list. And now I think it comes from New Directions. So
Yeah, it is New Directions now. Yeah.
So tell them about, because it's a very odd book. It's
so
a very
weird.
odd book.
It's bonkers. It's just bonkers. It's a story, and I just I can't remember who recommended it to me, but it might have been Sharon Nagel, and it's about a woman who falls in love with a sea monster, and it's about like marriage and loss, and like I said, I took copious notes on these recommendations. I don't know what to say about this book except that it is just like stunning and mind-blowing, and it's so sad and it's so beautiful. And the sea monster's name is Larry, and they fall in love, and he's sort of like, and she like her marriage is crumbling, and she and her husband have lost a child, and Larry comes into her life and is in his own kind of danger, and she needs to sort of help him escape. And it's like weird. It's like a feminist parable about marriage and sea monsters and desire. And it's such a cool book. It's so crazy.
As I seem to remember, it's been a while. It's got a very spare language about it, as I seem to remember.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I was trying to think of what it reminds me of. What's the book about the weather? Jenny Awful?
I think it's called Weather.
Yeah, it's called Weather. But also her other book, before that, The Department of Speculation, is just fantastic. And it's spare and it's gut-wrenching, and it's so good.
Less monsters. But would you feel
Yes, no monsters.
Would you feel that's a fair comparison? Am I crazy? I don't know. You
I don't
go,
know.
the audience can write to me and say whether I'm nuts for comparing the two books or not. I didn't really, that was kind of off the cuff.
I
haven't
wouldn't,
read-
yeah.
I
That
haven't
was the
read
one I
Weather.
wanted to read.
We should
Which
talk
one?
about your book, your writing group.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. So we have been together as a group for like in like various forms and sort of I think originally one of the members, John, and we were like an offshoot of another writing group, and I think we started meeting separately about 15 years ago, because I remember we used to have to drive way out to Franklin, and I was pregnant with one of my kids, and I was like, I can't, we need to make this meet in Shorewood. So only one person took me up on that. So, and then various people have slowly joined to make it to the group that it is today. And yeah, I just am in love with my writing group and just love every single person in it. And we had a banner. I don't know. Time has kind of melted together for me. I think I was going to say a banner year, but I think it was maybe I think it's maybe the last 2 years. So Liam Callahan's book, Paris by the Book, came out, and then Christina Clancy's The Second Home came out, and then this year she published Shoulder Season. They were like just one after the other. It was like there was just a year between them. And Anuradha Rajakar's American Betia came out the month after mine did. So we had a crazy year, and all of those books, I mean, I'm definitely biased, but they're all so wonderful. And I just wanted to take a minute to recommend each and every one of those books.
I'm going to Lisa's going to talk to you because I'm taking more than a minute to do all the links.
You do all the links. So how often do you guys meet? How often does the group meet?
We try to meet every 4 weeks, and we managed to keep it going through the pandemic virtually. And then just last month, we started meeting in person outside again.
And do you review each other's work, sort of catch up? Give people a flavor of what being in a writing group is like, because not everybody gets to be a writer.
We have I think a 15-page limit, which I've sold off my page limit to other people because I haven't written in a while. So I didn't actually sell my pages, but we have we submit 10, 15, 20 pages to each other at the beginning, whenever we can, with a deadline of the Monday before we meet. And then we read and critique and then come together to talk about the pages.
That's actually really nice, especially to have that and then to hear that, those suggestions, and still stay together.
Yeah, it's not I mean, there's no, it's not like that. We are all, I think they're some of the best readers, and nobody else sees my work. Occasionally I'll show it to Andrew, but usually that's more towards the end, towards the time when I'm almost finished with the project. But we just trust each other. I think I just trust them so much with my work. There's no that was a negative comment, I'm out of here. Nothing like that.
Have you made changes? Can I just, while as I'm typing in Christina Clancy's Shoulder Season, I have to say hi, Christy. What have you made, can you point to anything in the new book, Send For Me, where the writing group kind of had this idea?
That's a good question.
I love that.
So what did you say, Kat?
Have they been influential in shaping the book at all?
Nah, no, totally. But I can't specifically say. Just their comments are so astute, and sometimes it's just line by line, and sometimes it's more structural. And honestly, the book that Send For Me came out in February, and there's always a long lag time between when you finish a book and when it comes out. So I mean, I just can't remember anything specific that they told me to do, but definitely lots of suggestions and lots of
Liam told me that it was originally a scarf store, not a shoe store.
That is Liam. It was not a scarf store.
It's like shoes. No. So I hope
Go
somebody.
on.
Yeah. Thank you.
It was originally a Walmart.
Christina said that she told you to write in Pig Latin.
So I can't take all of their suggestions because some of them are just AZ cray.
Somebody had asked how you came to the title, and I thought I'd just throw that in before we forgot. And we'll
I
get back to.
was I was just talking to somebody about titles and how like you always have a title in mind because it kind of gives the book as you're working on it, like it's like an umbrella for the book. But the title that I had in mind as I was writing it was not Send for Me. It was an excerpt from one of the letters, and that's the book I submitted. And then my editor was like, nobody here really, that title doesn't stick for anybody. So we brainstormed and went back and forth with titles. It was really hard, especially because I was so close to it. I mean, closer than I have been really to any other book that I've written. And so she came up with Send for Me.
And I was going to say, do you take those things back to the group? Do you guys go over titles or complain about book jackets and all
Sure,
of
all
those
of that,
things
yeah.
everyone asks?
Yeah.
I can only imagine to be a fly on that wall of this group of writers.
It's magic. It's magic.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
So we had our last copy signed of American Batia before I don't know, moved to Evanston, but she promised she's coming up to the writing group every month still.
Yeah.
So I didn't put this on my list of recommendations, and I don't know why, but I recommended a book to her that I would also recommend to you. It's a middle grade book called How to Find What You're Not Looking For by Vera Hiranandani. And it's a middle grade book. It's about a Jewish family in Connecticut that own a bakery. And it's told from the younger daughter, and the older daughter elopes with a man from India. And it's right after Loving versus Virginia. So the family's dealing with anti-Semitism, but they're also dealing with the parents' unhappiness with her marrying outside the religion. So it's really good. So she wrote The Night Diaries about the partition.
Oh, which I love.
Yeah.
I love that book. So
there's
good.
a little secret. It's fictional, it's fictional. But I figured out that Vera, so her older sister has a baby at the end, and Vera's the baby in the book.
Oh.
That's how it all works together. And there's a recipe for black and white cookies. I mean, it's really got everything.
That's just giving me goosebumps.
Vera is such a beautiful writer too.
Honorata also likes The Night Diaries.
Yeah, it's great.
And Annie Honorata is also a beautiful writer, and this book is Goldin. It's can I talk about it for a minute?
Please.
So,
Please.
I would cry if you didn't.
It's hard for me to summarize my own books, but it's almost as hard to summarize the books of my writing group friends and colleagues because we work so like intimately with each other, and I feel like I've seen draft after draft of these books. So again, I had to write this down. So American Batia is the story of Ronnie, an American girl of Indian descent growing up in Evanston in a loving, strict family who falls in love for the first time with an edgy, artistic white boy from a difficult family of his own. It's a story about a girl trying to make her way in the world under the weight of her parents' expectations, the cultural heritage that she both appreciates and resents, and her own growing sense of herself. And it's kind of about first love. It kind of like highlights the story of first love and then like puts a big question mark at the end of it, because the love story between Ronnie and Oliver gets like edgier and more complicated, and he sort of exoticizes her and his microaggressions pile up, and it's a kind of a coming of age story and a coming of identity story for Ronnie. And she's a great protagonist. She's a really, it's YA, but it's like, I don't know. It could,
12 and up,
it doesn't have,
12 until 112.
Exactly.
Just like my board games from my childhood. Yes.
I was going to say, sometimes those YA books and even the middle grade it's about story. It's not about anything else. And you can tell a different kind of story in those formats.
Yeah. I don't know. I really like reading YA for plot too, just because they're like the prime directive of YA is to make it a page turner. Otherwise your audience will abandon it. I think more so than adult literature. So and plot is hard for me. So I really like reading, like I remember reading The Hunger Games. I'm not comparing your book to The Hunger Games, Annie, but I remember reading The Hunger Games.
If it sells some books.
Right.
Like
but just being like, that's how you write like a page turner, and that's the genre that like gobbles it up.
I have a bookseller that runs our book group, adults reading YA novels, young adult novels, and she'll tell me about adult novels. They're just so slow.
Right?
I just want it to move.
So so Christy Clancy's Shoulder Season is also on my list of recommendations, and it's an adult novel that is really juicy and moves fast. And I can't find my copy of it, so there's Daniel's. That's the problem with books that I love to recommend. I give them away and then I never see them again. So Shoulder Season is a coming of age story about a young woman from East Troy, Wisconsin, who's hired as a Playboy bunny at the resort in Lake Geneva. And so Christy and I have talked about this a lot. Like, is it historical fiction because it takes place in the 80s? Maybe, but it gets all those period details right, you know, just perfect, like from hairstyles to like the celebrities of the day. And I think that it's a feminist like coming of age story because it's about like women's work and the compromises that women have to make. And Sherry, the protagonist, is like flawed and she makes mistakes and she makes decisions that, you know, maybe the reader will question, but I feel like that's the strength of the book because, you know, you were just following her along. We're just along for the ride.
And she also framed the story in the present or later.
Oh yeah, you're right. She does.
So, yes. Oh, Risa loves Shoulder Season. She'd just like to tell Christy. So do we. Here's another. I promise. I think we'll get through everything, but I promise that we talk about the cake dog, right? E.J. Levy.
Oh.
Would you talk about that?
Me?
Yeah,
Yes, please.
So it's about the first female surgeon in South Africa, kind of in the 19th century. The main character. It's based on the life of, oh gosh,
James Barry?
Because she's James Barry, but then E.J. Ellen, the character's name is Jonathan Perry because she couldn't write, you know, she wasn't able to use the names of the actual human beings in the book. She is born female and lives through a variety of complicated circumstances, is forced to live her life as a man in order to sort of make her way in the world. And it is a story about like I think it's about the contradictions of gender and the way we carry our secrets. And it's kind of a love story too, because it's hard for me to know which pronouns to use because there was some controversy with this book when it came out.
She rotates actually pronouns in parts of the book.
Yeah. And it's about a time period that I'd never really thought that much about before. So I feel like it's also like just exquisite historical literature as well.
Yeah. I think this is actually the perfect opportunity of the word they, not necessarily meaning that they're non-binary, but that, you know, that it's that it's best to not determine what the pronoun is.
Yeah.
Because even the experts we read, we did a lot of we were playing with this book a bit, and even the experts were unsure of whether she was living the life as a man because of lack of opportunity completely, or because it was like they had a trans identity.
Yeah, whether it was how much of it was choice. Is it
how much was desire, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm gonna send that link to everybody. So
I've got it set up already, Daniel. Do you want me to do it?
Oh, love it. Yes.
All right. You can ask the next question. I'll finish this last typing.
Okay.
Are we going to go to the next book?
We are, and it's Songs in Ursa Major by Emma Brody.
Who Lauren gave to her mother.
Yeah,
is that right?
So I don't have it. Yeah, because I gave it to my mom. Mom,
it's here.
You can keep it. So it's kind of a riff on. It's also kind of historical fiction. It's kind of a riff on the actual love story between James Taylor and Joni Mitchell, which who knew? I did not. And also who knew it could be so juicy? Like it's just have you guys read it?
No, I was looking at, I'm interested. I read a lot of music novels.
She writes, so I'm not a musical person, and a couple of these books on my list of recommendations have that theme. She writes so beautifully about music as as art and as like kind of all-consuming you know, psychological fodder. And she just, it's kind of a riff on the recording industry of the 70s, which seems like it was brutal for women. And it's about mental illness and drug addiction. And it's a coming of age story about Jane Quinn, who's sort of the Joni Mitchell character.
I was going to ask who she was modeling it on, I should say.
So I did an event with her because we share an editor, and I became kind of obsessed. Like I used to listen to all that music in college, and I just like brought it all back for me, and I kind of became obsessed about like the celebrity gossip. And so I did like a deep dive into, you know, like entertainment gossip of the time. And there's a Carly Simon character who's like more commercial than the Joni Mitchell character, and kind of like there's like it's a love triangle among those three. And it's really like, I'm not doing it justice because it really stands by itself as as beautifully written literary fiction, but it's also kind of juicy and gossipy, which was fun.
Well, between Visit from the Goon Squad and Daisy Jones and the Six,
and Mary Jane.
And we were going to say, and we're doing an event that is also, it's set in 1975 in Baltimore, and it's about a young woman who is from a very conservative Baltimore Roland Park family, who is a nanny for these more swinging couple, who he's a psychiatrist, and he brings a rock star and his actress singer girlfriend to live in the house and have therapy and to treat his addiction secretly. And Christina said, I'm insane for Mary Jane. It's a book I think almost anyone would enjoy. And then it's funny because I gave it to when we have these 2 p.m. events, one of my sisters sometimes can join. And so I send her the book ahead of time, and she said, she wrote me back like in an hour, like, I can't stop reading. So
I know it's taken like wildfire amongst my booksellers too. I think over half of my booksellers have read it.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and love it.
But it is it's in Margaret's top 5 for the year. That's how we kind of does it seem interesting to you? Are we talking you into it?
Are you talking to everybody?
Ursa Major, if you read Mary Jane.
Okay.
What's our next? Lisa, do you have a recommendation?
Well, what's obsessing my time and is not out yet is The Search, which is the book about the search committee to find a new minister for the Universalist Unitarian Church. And it's just fantastic.
It's not out till next April.
I know. We're teasing everybody. But it's fantastic, and I want to like sell it now. So sometimes it's really hard to read something so far in advance. Right,
but we're going to help get other booksellers to read it. It's got the weirdest setup for a plot in the world. Yes. It's the search for, did you hear us right? It's about the search for a Unitarian minister at this congregation in California. That's the plot.
And it's a novel, but when you open up the first title page, it's the title and it's a memoir with recipes. So it even gets twistier.
Yes,
it is really twisty.
And the author, this is the author's 5th novel. Oh, why are we spending so much time on this? This is the author's 5th novel, and I read them all. And I just have I have this project that Lisa knows about where I'm reading one old book every month. Like, what is old to me? It's 3 years. And because that's so old that I wouldn't do it in our book club probably. And so far, two of the authors have announced new books. Her and Tom Perrotta's book just got announced. So
what's the author of this?
Her name is Michelle Hunneman, and she was the restaurant critic. James Land was published by Knopf. The first 2 novels were published by Knopf, Round Rock and James Land. And I actually just read Round Rock after owning it for like 20 years. And James Land's one of my favorite books of all time. And he's also, there's Unitarians in that one too.
A few.
It's about you.
I can't really see the chat because I don't have it up on my computer, but I think somebody is asking what the name of the book I recommended is. It's The Cape Doctor. the Cape Doctor
Oh, I
by
thought,
E.J.
did
Levy.
we send the
I
Cape
did it.
Doctor?
I
There
did
it
send the links, but maybe they don't get out if you don't pass them forward.
Oh, you know what? Some of yours are going to host and panelists instead of everyone. So
Oh,
let
I
me,
apologize.
that's
I didn't
okay.
change
Life
that.
is, I do it too, but now Cape Doctor links have been sent out to everyone. And I just want to remind folks that if you're interested in something, just click on the link right away. Unless you have a very fragile computer system, it'll pop up in another page, and then it'll stay there after we go away. So you'll have books to look at your leisure. I just sent Songs in Ursa Major also.
Yes, and I changed it to everyone, so I'll get the rest of them correct.
Okay. I just wanted to mention a book that we were talking about, like, well, we're taking these recommendations from you, Lauren, and it's books that, you've, and recommendations from your friends in the writing group. And I just want to give a shout out for Kindest Lie, one of my favorite books of the year, which is a book that Christina Clancy introduced me to. He's so good. I mean, I think of myself as an introvert, always trying to be an extrovert, but I can take lessons.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah, you should. But I honestly, if I didn't have to run this bookstore, I'd be hiding. And Christina just actually was with her at Printers Row, and it is about a woman, a successful Black woman in Chicago who gets a proposal offer from her very pretty good catch of a boyfriend. Oh, he wants a family and that kind of stuff. What she hasn't told him is that she had a kid in high school and gave it up for adoption. And the family took the kid, and kid disappeared, and basically said, now you're going to be able to do what you need to do. And so now she wants to do that. So it alternates the story of her and a young white boy who's a friend of the family who's struggling with being bullied, who may have the key. So I really enjoyed that a lot. Did Ken read that, Lisa?
I don't remember.
I think it's a good book for Ken.
Okay, I will tell him that.
That's all I've done. Did we miss, you didn't talk about, I guess we have one more, we have Paris by the Book, another now.
Another writing, yeah.
It's not unknown to fans of Boswell and Books and Company, and maybe have you heard, we will just send a link. And also, has Liam shared anything from his new book in the writing group?
Well, sure, but I can't say.
I've heard
I'm like, what have
I've
you
heard
heard?
it's there may be a link to another country in Europe.
Okay, I feel like I'm not saying anything. Yes, but of course, we've been with him. It's in Pig Latin, Christy is saying, yes.
We're fluent in Pig Latin, Christy.
Well, I think you've got a little thing to read about Liam's book, my guess.
Sure. Okay, so it's a mystery. I'm going to pretend I didn't write this down. It's a mystery set in Paris. An American family kind of comes to a woman's husband goes missing, and they come to Paris to try to find him, and they end up owning a bookstore, and it's kind of like a literary treasure hunt to sort of try to find the missing husband.
I think that is excellent. And I believe the store exists in real life. And when we hosted the Paris Library, it's by what is her name? Who was the person who wrote Janet Skesley and Charles? It's her favorite bookstore. Like, she's like Shakespeare and Company. That's okay. It's all about the Red Wheelbarrow, and everybody has to go there. And to think that Liam could have bought it.
But he stayed here solely to stay in the writing group, I think.
Yes, that's sure. What I was thinking as well. I think that's what it's all about. All right, I'm going to send. I have a lot of things to send. Do you have any?
Paris by the Book. And I want you to talk about the Un-Americans.
Oh, I know.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I forgot one. Okay,
that's been on my pile for, I don't know, when did it come out? 2014.
So so Daniel will never read it because it's way too old.
It could be my one.
It's short stories by Molly Antipal, and it felt like I don't know, I'd been hearing about it for years, and then I did an event with her in the spring, so I read it, and it just was like, it's just beautiful short stories. They, in some ways, they felt kind of, the book felt kind of old-fashioned to me, like it was, like just the way the short stories were written. So the Un-Americans kind of refers to the feeling of being an outsider, either like someone who doesn't fit into America, to a particular part of American society that they aspire to, or it's about, like, some of the stories take place in Europe and in Israel. And one story is about a Hollywood exile who's blacklisted. One story is about Israeli brothers, one of whom is injured, serving in the army. One story is about a young woman who's trying to navigate a relationship with an older man. It's just lovely writing, complex characters, and they're tight, and they're like, there's just not a word wasted in these short stories. They're really beautiful.
So she just needs to write another book.
She's working on one, as far as I know.
Okay.
It's taken her, like, she said something like she doesn't care if it takes her 10 years, if she writes a book every decade, she's fine with that. And I feel like you can kind of like, there'll be a decent payoff.
Yeah, but she probably needs a day job.
Yeah, I think she has one. I think she's a teacher.
All right, feel better.
Yeah.
Hey, Lisa,
Yes.
since I didn't read it, but your store is gaga over it, can you say a few words about the music of bees?
Oh, thanks. I haven't read it either. But
Well, we're all both have read it by
No,
November
but
3rd.
I do know enough about it. So it's about a woman that is a beekeeper, and it's a business. And if I speak out of terms, I apologize. But I remember them talking that she has a beekeeping business, she does honey, and she needs some help. So she puts out a want ad, and she gets a teenage boy that comes she's not quite sure about, and then another guy comes and he's got his own struggles, and she sort of puts together this sort of group of oddballs, and it's just about how community comes together to work on making honey. So that's the basic plot of it, but I think it's just a story. It's very heartfelt and moving. What I love is, if you know my store, we all have very different reading loves, but when Katrina and Ken and Judy and Tony and other people all start liking the same book, you know that book has wide appeal. And
yeah,
that's
I've been using that. I use that model all the time. Like, what is going on with a book when you see all these different kinds of people, when it being passed around for a book that you didn't think that everybody would like.
Right.
And it's so interesting, like what catches people. Did you, Lisa, did you wind up getting a lot of reads on the Anthony Doerr? Because we did.
We did too. And that was another one that galleys were just passed back and forth with each other. There's
a lot of high profile books out.
Yeah.
And that was the one that seemed to connect with the most people in the store. Everybody, it came out. Oh, I think it came out today. Actually.
It came out today.
There's one on my desk at the moment. So it's and I think he's friends with Liam, so it all connects together.
And he writes in Pig Latin.
And he writes in Pig Latin. Actually, it's partly about the siege of Constantinople, where they probably were writing in Pig Latin a little bit.
Or raising pigs.
Or they might have been raising pigs at the library in the United States, or maybe they have pigs on the rocket ship in the future.
Just really going off the rails.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. I love that. I love when like different kinds of people. One of the like when Lisa, remember when I gifted you Leonard and Hungry Paul that you didn't read?
Yes. Yes.
That was one of those books that I got a whole bunch of people to read.
And us too. Yeah. And Lauren, have you read Leonard and Hungry Paul?
She's not reading it. It's Spite at this point.
I have it. Yeah. I have it.
Daniel, will there be an event in which we don't talk about Leonard and Hungry Paul?
Yeah.
That's going to be the year 2021.
On Ecuadorian farming, and it came up.
Lauren, where do you get your book recommendations for things that you like to read? Since we're talking already about, all those connections. Do you have a favorite spot or a couple people that you really depend on besides Daniel?
I mean, look in the mirror, you two. Yeah, no, I just have my ears open, ears to the ground, because I feel like it's part of my job. So I'm just constantly
Yeah.
like New York Times and you guys and my friends whose reading taste I admire, and I'm kind of ecumenical.
I think you gave a shout out to Sharon Nagel at the Whitefish Bay Public Library.
But then she unshouted out and said she wasn't the one who recommended Mrs. Caliban. She thinks it was Stacey Williams. But shout out to them both.
Oh, it is a very Stacey book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So we're so excited because Sharon's book's coming out from Vintage next
Yes.
week.
Oh,
Yep.
Shady Hollow, the Shady Hollow trilogy from Juno Black, February, March, and April of next year. Beautiful new covers, and hey, it's your publisher, your sister.
that is fantastic.
You're something.
For
For anyone who likes mysteries with animals that are not quite a cozy, a little too violent and too much affairs, but just not like anything you've read, and yet you'll completely say, why am I not reading more books like this? Miss Marple as animals. I don't know. Anyway, I think we're just about done.
This has been so much fun.
Yeah.
We should just have people on to talk about different books.
I'm with you. So thank you very much to Lauren Fox. Don't forget, everybody, if you haven't read Send For Me, you should read it. And if not, it is now on paperback, and it makes a delightful holiday gift.
It does.
Which holiday?
Yes, which holiday? All of them. Halloween, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Sukkot. It is a spectacular Sukkot book. So that's all I have to say about that. I'm still I'm doing a link for, I can't give up. I'm doing a link for Lennon and Hungry Paul as we speak.
Oh.
Lisa, take us home.
Thank you all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. And use Lauren's book for a book club, because it's a great book club discussion. It really is. And you can bring food.
It will bowl people over.
Yeah.
They'll be like, "What? How are you so smart that you picked this book?"
I'll come talk to your book club. I love doing that.
Very nice. Well, we will let folks know. All right.
Yes, we will.